Yeah, no problem. Well, yeah, so if you just want to raise your hand if you have a private woodlot. Yeah, there's a in the room. Awesome. So I could just start by introducing myself because I know I'm starting to see some familiar faces, but I'm sure that a lot of you don't know who I am. So my name is McCavour. I am a PhD student at Dalhousie University and I'm focused in soil science. So the last 3 years, I was the Provincial Soil Specialist for Perennia, Food and Agriculture, so for agriculture throughout the province. I did my master's working in forestry soils, so I did the Otter Ponds Demonstration Forest liming trials, looking at changes in soil chemistry. So I'm really happy to be working back in forestry. And this project, so I started back in September. And we're just the project technically started in September, but we're just starting our sampling season coming up soon. So the primary focus of this project is developing a forest soil health and extension program. And so for any of you who are familiar with how the extension program works in agriculture, you can take a soil sample and send it to your local lab, and they can give you recommendations based on that. And we don't have that for forestry. And we don't even have the baseline data for that. So that's where we're kind of starting. So if you get anything out of today, I hope you at least remember the acronym ForestSHARE. And then maybe remember my face if you see me around at other things. So I introduced myself already. And so I've worked in soil science around the province for now about 6 or 7 years. So before I get into the details of the project, I do want to talk about the project partners. So we're working with Murray Reeves Forestry, so Debbie Reeves down in Lunenburg County. She's helping with the financial piece as well as connecting with woodlot owners. We're working with the Family Forest Network and Dr. Kevin Keys, as well as different labs in Dalhousie University. So my lab is the Center for Sustainable Soil Management. But we're also working with the Microbiology and Immunology Department in Halifax, working with the Department of Natural Resources, NSCC campuses throughout the province, as well as Genome Atlantic. So we have a lot of different partners because this is a province-wide project that we want to make accessible to as many people as possible. So, why is this important? So soil health has a lot of different definitions depending on what your goals are, what ecosystem you have, but really our goal is to determine what the soil health is in Nova Scotia and how do we use that information to improve soil health. And improved soil health can often lead to increased forest productivity, carbon sequestration, biodiversity, and climate change resilience. So a lot of this funding that we've got for this project has come from that climate change resilience piece where if we can understand our soil health, can we understand our forest health better and help our forests become more resilient to extreme conditions. So when I talk about the impacts of this project, I like to think about it on 2 scales. One is the woodlot owner scale, that hopefully by the end of this project, you'll have the information that you need to go be able to collect soil samples and get recommendations based on that. We also are looking at kind of these overarching climate goals where improving soil health and forest productivity, as well as forest health, we can kind of help combat against some of these climate change impacts. So the knowledge gaps that we're trying to address with this project, what we don't know, is what soil health properties are relevant. So when we talk about soil health, I often think about the chemistry, biology, and physical parts of it, and there are 50 to 100 different things that you can measure. We don't need to measure all these things, but we do need to identify which of those measurements are most important in Nova Scotia forests. And that may change depending on what type of forest system you have as well. So we're looking at that, and we're also looking, are they relevant and are they easy to measure? Because if you have different soil properties are very difficult to measure, they can't be easily measured in a lab or just out in the field, we don't really want to look at those because this is meant to, the outcome of this project is meant to be practical. We have no absolute value, so if we identify, say, pH as a really important soil property, we have no idea what the general pH range. We have a guess, but we don't know the exact numbers right now for different ecosites or different ecosystems in the province. And we don't have that data to develop that extension program. So, the main objectives of this project are 1, to develop a suite of forest soil health indicators for Nova Scotia woodlots, 2, develop woodlot soil health management interpretations, and then develop a framework for provincial forest soil health extension. So, the management interpretations and soil extension, we are probably a couple years away from that. Right now, we're really looking at collecting the data so we can do that. So in order to do this, we are collecting 1,700 samples, so we're hoping to collect 1,700 samples across the province at 850 sites. So at each site, we'll be collecting a forest sample as well as a mineral soil sample. And then we want to capture a wide range of conditions. So how we're doing this is we're using the Forest Ecosystem Classification Guide to determine different ecosites. Because management interpretations for a sugar maple stand is going to be very different than a spruce pine, and your soil is likely going to look different. So we don't want to be including all that data in one because you're going to get a lot of variability. And then we're hoping to use that data to develop these benchmarks so that if you are looking at a certain stand, you know that, okay, the pH or the calcium ratings for this stand in Nova Scotia typically range between this and this, and you can see where you line up along that range. So what we did is we used the predictive ecosystem map modeling, and we selected sites randomly throughout the province. So we selected sites based on the ecosites, like I said, so we divided it into different ecosites, and depending on how much private land was available within those ecosites, we have 30 to 90 samples that we're collecting per each one of these different ecosites. We're targeting forests that are 40 years old. We're not looking at wetland conditions. And so we also needed to have a good spatial distribution, so we're capturing different climate conditions. And so when we collected these samples, or when we did this, it ends up looking like this. So each one of these different colors represents a different ecosite. Now, this is the start. We are anticipating that we may not be able to find all these sites or find who owns these sites. So that is kind of our next step is we have these points. We've identified names of where these points are, but we don't have contact information. So if you're interested in the project and want to know maybe if there's a point on your site, then reach out to us. I'll have my contact information, and I have a sheet with contact information. And what we're doing is just going to these sites and collecting soil samples. I'll describe that a little bit more. And so the other thing is that some of these sites might be dropped if it's not the right ecosite. So if we're looking for a very specific stand and we go out there and we don't find that, then we can't sample it. So just to give you some context, this is just the number of sites per county. So it gives you a general idea of the distribution. And keep in mind, this is only on private land. There have been some of these samples that have been taken on Crown land, but that project is separate. We're combining the data, but it's not part of this funding. So, like I said, we randomly selected the sites. If your site is collected, we're going to try and contact you and just ask if we can come take a sample. And so we're hiring forest professionals to take the samples. We've actually already done some training in the western and central region, looking to do some training in the eastern region. So if you know of any forest professionals that are interested in helping collect these samples, there is a fee that we pay them for collecting these samples. They'll reach out to you. You'll have to answer about 10 questions about your site, but it's things like how long have you had your piece of land? It's simple things to answer. What are your goals? Things like that. And then the sampling is very non-invasive, so we're taking an auger or a shovel and digging 3 little spots in that stand, collecting that sample, and it's being delivered to the lab. So we might ask for some information about the site, but overall for the woodlot owners, you just have to give consent. Your data won't be shared anywhere else. It'll be pooled with all the other data. You personally can have that data from the lab. But at no point will we say, oh, this was John's results, and I'm sharing it with other people. That won't happen. So this is just an example. So this is this site here, it's on the Kings-Lunenburg County line. This is site 336, and just to give you an idea, is that we have this mapped as EcoSite 14+, so we're looking for anything with these vegetation types, so tolerant hardwoods, or these soil types. And basically when the samplers go out there, they just double check that it checks one of these boxes, and then they collect the sample. After that, this is we're collaborating with NSCC and the DNR offices. The samples will be dropped off at all of these different locations, frozen, and then brought to the lab. And these are some of the things that we'll be measuring in the lab. So my focus is more on the physical and chemical properties of soil, but we also have the lab in Halifax that's focusing on the microbiology of soil, which is really interesting because that's we don't know a lot about that in soil right now. So these are just some of the things that will be measured. So pH, your nutrients, texture, aggregate stability, so how well that soil will hold together when you have impacts on it, such as heavy rainfall or machinery, organic matter, and then different carbon components. So the outcomes were at very early stages of the project. We hopefully will start collecting samples next week or the week after. But the overall goal is that at the end of these 4 to 5 years, we'll have a framework to take and develop and deliver samples, so that you have a framework that if you want to know more about what's going on on your land, in your soil, you can collect the samples, know where to send them, and know how to interpret the data. We hope to have guidance on the soil properties, so if your pH is low, what are the options that you can do? Is this a problem in your site? For example, and then these are just some examples because this is a question I get a lot is, what are the potential management interpretations? And the first answer is, we don't know yet because we're not there. But when you think about soil and agriculture, oftentimes your management interpretations are, we'll go spread this fertilizer. But that's not feasible in a lot of forest stands. So things like we can identify compaction or erosion-prone areas of your stand. Maybe that changes the location of your skidder trails. It also depends on what your goals are, or your goals biodiversity. It might help us determine, okay, we're losing a lot of carbon from the system. We can tell that from the soil. How much do we need to leave when we harvest or something like that. So those are just some potential examples, but those will come out a little bit more once we have the data and once we're able to interpret it. So from a landowner perspective, if you do get a call, all we need you to do is check a box that say, yes, you can come sample, yes, we don't mind if you use the data from our land. Let us know about your harvest activities, and let us know how you'd like to receive updates about the project. And so I wanted to talk, I talked a little quickly there, but I wanted to give a general overview because I want to leave lots of times for questions. And if there was anything, I always say this because I'm in the soil world all the time. I forget sometimes that sometimes I say things and people are like, that is not an everyday term. So just if there was anything that you want to discuss further, I'll be here until the end of the day too if you want to come talk to me afterwards. But I hope that people are excited about this project because I think it's long overdue. And I think we're going to have some good information. This QR code doesn't work. I just found that out today, so I'm sorry. But if you do want to know more information, if you go to the Center for Sustainable Soil Management website, they have, there's a little description about the project. If you want to contact us directly, that's me, Debbie Reeves, and Kevin Keys, who are the co-leads on the project. And we'll be happy to answer any of your questions.